undergraduate student with us in political science and international affairs, and now she's considering coming here as well for her master's degree. So Priscilla, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So I want you to tell me a little bit about your undergraduate degree here and what type of courses you took, and then we'll talk a little bit about the experiences you had as part of that degree too.
Sure, so I got a bachelor's in international affairs. I specifically concentrated on Europe. We pick regions of the world that you want to study, and so I concentrated on Europe, which means I also took a lot of Russian language courses. So I took classes on international organizations where you learn about the different, like, all these acronyms that people talk about. You understand what NATO is and its function in the world, and the UN, and just organizations like that, and how they help governments and work alongside governments, and just other non-government actors, so that you're learning how countries work alongside NATO, but there's a bunch of countries that are a part of NATO and why that happens in the world. You take classes like politics of development, where you study really poor countries and how their governments are developed differently than ours, and why corporations seek to have factories in countries like that. So you're just learning about different types of governments and the different types of people groups and how those can affect what their government is like. You take classes in history depending on your region. So I took a lot of Russian history classes and European history classes, but if you're studying Asia, you'll have the industrialization of China as a history course to help build up some of that elective background in the major. We also take classes, I took Model UN, which is a really cool opportunity. You get to go to a conference in Atlanta and do a mock United Nations conference, and that teaches you a lot about the organization itself.
So why did you decide to come to North Georgia at the beginning, in the first place, as a student? And why did you ever choose international affairs as your major?
So I took a gap year in between high school and college, where I was fortunate enough to travel, and I worked with a nonprofit organization, and I was like, oh, I don't have to go to college. I can just work with a nonprofit for the rest of my life. And my family really challenged me to look at, okay, so if this is the type of job you want, what are most of your counterparts? What is their degree history? And so I saw that most people who had the job that I was interested in having had a master's or a bachelor's degree. And so I was like, okay, I should find a college that offers some type of international studies program. And so I saw that North Georgia, which was close to home, which I liked. I didn't want to go out of state. I saw North Georgia had a very well-known international affairs program, and that's why I decided to come here.
Great. So we're talking to Priscilla Sassman, and she was an undergraduate student here in international affairs, which is in the Department of Political Science and International Affairs. And so we're talking to her a little bit about her experience, both in the degree, why she chose to come to North Georgia. And so another question for you is, international affairs has to have a regional expertise, right?
Right.
And you mentioned that you were European concentration, but you focused on Russia and Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
So as part of international affairs, you're required to study abroad and also do an international internship. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences?
Yes, I got to study abroad in Russia, which was an incredible experience. It's difficult to understand and study the people without ever actually interacting with any of them. So this gave me an opportunity to take classes at a Russian university. So that helps you understand more of the Russian mentality or the Eastern European mentality, because you're actually getting graded and taught by a Russian professor, which is a very different experience than being graded and taught by an American professor. And that really helps understand, okay, so this is how their businesses function, because you're actually interacting with people. You're interacting with people that are the same age as you and understanding more of their political environment. I was actually there during an election year. It was an election year here as well as 2016. So it's really unique to see the political involvement of people in my age, how it differs between political involvement in the U.S. and it does in Russia. So that was really unique, and it taught me a lot about understanding the people. Knowing the language helps a lot too, because they form sentences differently based on just the way that their culture and history has changed them. So that's really helpful. I did an internship. Mine was actually still
what kind of work did you do? Who did you get to meet as part of that internship?
With the internship, I was working mostly with people who are from Kosovo, which is a not quite independent country in Eastern Europe. And I was working with college students, Kosovar college students who are studying in America, helping them get adjusted and make sure that they're taking the right classes and working with their professors, because their relationships that they have with Kosovar college professors is different than how you would form a relationship with an American college professor. So I was just helping them develop good language skills, helping them with job interviews so they could have jobs and work on campus and things like that.
So what are some of the differences that they talked about those relationships between professors and students in the United States versus professors and students in Russia or in other systems of education?
Right. So typically Eastern European professors don't want to see you outside of class. They have no interest in getting an email from you outside of class hours. They don't really want to interact with you too much beyond the lecture period. And that is fairly different here in the States. Professors want you to come to their office hours. Professors are actually required to have office hours where you have to come and see them and ask questions. If you don't understand something in class, it's really important to go talk to your professor or send them an email. And that is just a hard concept for a lot of the Eastern Europeans I interact with to understand, because they are uncomfortable with those professor-student dynamics. So it was an adjustment getting them used to that.
Right. So if you are an international student and if you are interested in coming to the University of North Georgia and pursuing a degree in political science or international affairs, the really interesting thing is in international affairs we have 4 different regions that you can study. You can study Europe, you can study Latin America, you can study the Middle East and North Africa, or you can study East Asia. And education in the United States at the undergraduate level is very different than it is across the world. So because of that, you might have multiple choice exams, maybe in your first year here. In general, however, our courses are more writing intensive, so you'll have essay exams as well as having a lot of papers and things like that that are due. However, the U.S. educational system tends to have more testing throughout the term as opposed to a massive test at the end of the term. So we understand that you're adjusting and that you're coming through into a different educational system. And so as our students in international affairs go and spend time overseas and study abroad and have those different experiences, they too are adjusting to different types of educational systems. And the great part about that is it academically develops you in a new and different way. So Priscilla, so you had an undergraduate degree here in international affairs, and then you chose to apply to our master's in international affairs. Can you tell me why you chose to apply? And then I know that you applied for an assistantship as well. Can you explain sort of how you applied for the assistantship? So those are 2 different questions. So why did you apply to the program, and then how did you go about applying for an assistantship?
Sure. So I wanted to apply to the master's program because I think getting a master's degree is just a great next step to set you apart in the job field from just having a bachelor's. I know getting a master's degree is going to not only develop the things I've already learned in my bachelor's degree, but it's going to help just continue to build relationships with people. It helps you network more. You get more opportunities to spend time with the people in the department. And I think that having a master's degree does give you that extra step when you're applying for jobs. So.
Okay. And so can you explain to me the process for applying for an assistantship in the MAIA degree? And then what does your assistantship pay, and what do you have to do as part of that?
Right. So I haven't started that yet, so I'm sure I will learn more as I begin. But the way that I applied was I went to HireTouch, which is the university's hiring website, and I searched for the job. I knew exactly what department I wanted to apply for, so I had to send in a resume and a cover letter, which of course included professional references, and I was fortunate enough to get accepted into that. And so I know that I will have some office hours, which means I'll be able to assist a professor, so I'll be actually sitting in on classes and working alongside a professor and developing relationships with students, which will be really interesting because I've been in their shoes already, and not too far long ago was I in their shoes, and so that will help kind of build some bridges myself to learn more as I help answer students' questions and get to interact with them, because it'll keep refreshing things in my own mind.
Yeah, I think the really great part about our graduate assistants here at the University of North Georgia inside the Political Science and International Affairs Department is that you receive a tuition waiver. When you go to graduate school, one of your biggest costs is tuition. So if you're fortunate enough to get an assistantship, with that comes a tuition waiver. And so that takes a lot of the heat off the cost of going to graduate school, which is really great. And then you have to work for the department about 20 hours a week in support of an instructor. And what's so great about that is that you have an opportunity then to learn in a more in-depth way the subject matters that you're talking about in your classes already. And so in general, what we want to do is help you develop. And so as part of that assistantship, you will often teach 1 or 2 courses, not the whole course, just a class, on a particular topic so you can get feedback from the instructor. The instructor is supposed to be helping develop you as a professional, along with, of course, having your assistants in the class. And so it's really helpful here at the University of North Georgia. Really are all of our international affairs, security studies students, as well as political science students, are required to have both global issues, which is really Introduction to International Relations, which is Political Science 2401, as well as American Government, Political Science 1101. So if you choose to join us as an MPA student and apply for an assistantship, you will most likely be assisting in 1101, which is the American Government area. And if you do a Master's in International Affairs, you'll tend to focus your assistantship in 2401.